Over the past 2 years or so, there's been serious concern that the Donald Trump organization and Donald Trump individually might be profiting from him being the president. We've got a potential case of that I want to delve into. And reporting on that was Derek Kravitz, a journalist at ProPublica, who joins us now on the Damage Report. Welcome to the show.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I was very interested in your piece breaking down a case where it appears that the taxpayers have paid Trump properties for an expensive party, sort of, for Donald Trump. Can you give us the details on that?
Sure. So every time President Trump visits Mar-A-Lago, obviously a lot of staff, a lot of equipment, a lot of security goes with him, and that's being paid for by the federal government. And in order to make sure that he has everything he needs when he's doing a diplomatic state visit from an outside foreign leader, there's a lot more personnel needed. And so we got a hold of receipts and emails and information that showed how much actually the taxpayers are paying in order to make sure President Trump can host people at Mar-A-Lago and basically have all of the trappings of the presidency at his winter White House. The problem with that, obviously, is this money goes to Mar-A-Lago, which in essence is a business that the prime beneficiary is President Trump himself. So that's where the conflict is.
And so let's talk about amounts. I mean, you've got a particular case that you highlight in your article. Maybe we can learn a little bit more about that. But then overall, what are the sorts of amounts of money that we're talking about over the course of 2+ years of the Trump presidency?
So we're definitely talking millions that are being spent by various federal agencies, including Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, the State Department. But what we don't know is how much the White House is spending. The White House is not subject to the Freedom of Information Act, so we can't find information out that way. And obviously, they're not voluntarily disclosing how much money they're spending. So we suspect it's many multiples above tens of millions, but we don't know the full amount. What we do know is that every time State Department officials go there, they're spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per night on not just hotel rooms for their staff, but also banquet rooms and dinners and other things that federal staffers are entitled to when they're traveling with the president and traveling on official business. So that's the open question, is actually how much money is being spent.
And one of the interesting things that you talked about in your piece had to do with an attempt by the State Department to try to streamline this process and make it so that they weren't necessarily in the next few years spending quite so much money, but that was actually rejected by the Trump administration. What did that look like?
So in the federal procurement process, there's a contract that a federal agency can make with a hotel. In this case, it's called a blanket purchase agreement. So they tried to, essentially have Mar-A-Lago sign this contract for $200,000 over 4 years of the first term of Trump's presidency. The Mar-A-Lago said no. They said that there were too many issues with federal procurement rules and issues regarding competitive bidding. And they didn't want to go down that road and didn't want to run afoul of those federal rules. So they rejected the government's contract. So to get around that, the State Department had to create a new travel card, a new credit card through Citibank. And they passed that credit card around to staffers who are traveling to Mar-A-Lago. And it's essentially a credit card only for Mar-A-Lago. And it is pretty unique. It's unusual that the federal government does this. And so because of that, there's a lot of issues that pop up, including how much money is being spent and if the amount of money that they're spending is in accordance with federal rules.
Do we know, I know that your piece was focused on the Trump presidency, but do we know of any past examples of this under other presidents where any businesses that they might have owned were being sort of constantly used in cases sometimes with gigantic sums of money that they could personally profit from?
There's no precedent for this. I mean, any ethics lawyer working under both Republican and Democratic administrations will say that even the case studies that are brought up as far as presidential conflicts of interest, Jimmy Carter and his peanut farm, FDR and his wife's radio stations that received federal funding, they pale in comparison to President Trump's businesses, which are in essence in a trust, but that trust then is for the exclusive benefit of President Trump. So there's no comparison in that sense. There is a fair amount of wealthy people that have served in government positions, but almost all of them have somehow set up a blind trust or recused themselves in a way where their financial interests aren't as apparent when they're traveling or when they're doing business on behalf of the government. So Penny Pritzker comes to mind. She was a Commerce Secretary under Obama. Obviously, there's several wealthy cabinet members in the Trump administration, but he's in a league of his own.
That certainly appears to be the case. And Derek Kravitz, we appreciate your work in this area and for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.